This week, we find out why the moon is actually Australia as we take a look at Borderlands, the pre-sequel. I chat with Sega about the upcoming Western release of Hatsune Miku, Project Diva F 2nd, and Jimmy the Geek counts down his top 5 games that never were. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen and I have an apology to make. In our review of The Sims 4, we commented that we expected to see certain elements of the game re-added in somewhere down the track as premium DLC. Turns out, we were half right. EA has announced plans for monthly content updates, including the addition of ghosts, an awesome Star Wars costume pack, new eye colours, career paths, rewards, and, wait for it, swimming pools. The best bit? They're free. They're not going to add in all of the things that weren't included in this new version, but we are certainly getting a lot more than we thought we would, and all without paying a cent. In some more surprising news from EA, Ian Millam from Visceral Games has made an unusual promise to shooter fans. Simply put, he says that Battlefield Hardline will work at launch. He's making the statement in response to a number of other games that, for one reason or another, have not worked at launch. But it's still a sad state of affairs when this is something that needs to be spelled out by developers. Moving on, an Australian politician has blamed video games for the country's high number of unemployed youth. Federal Liberal MP Ewan Jones has argued that young people should be made to wait 6 months before receiving unemployment benefits. A parliamentary committee has found that denying welfare like this is incompatible with Australia's human rights obligations, but the government persists. Jones has told reporters that young people should get up in the morning and look for work or attend work for the dole programs rather than sitting at home awake from 10 o'clock at night until 10 o'clock in the morning playing bloody Nintendo. Meanwhile, it's not all bad living down under. The brand new Assassin's Creed game has officially launched in Australia and New Zealand months before it's planned to hit around the world. Assassin's Creed Identity is the first mobile action RPG in the franchise, and gamers in the right regions have been treated to a soft launch in the iTunes App Store for free. Identity is a return to the Italian Renaissance, featuring all the freedom of movement we've come to expect from the console releases, squished down a bit for the mobile platform. You will be able to explore 3D maps of iconic Italian locations, like the Colosseum, complete with real-time lighting, weather presets and a dynamic crowd system, all on a platform you can fit in your pocket. And speaking of Assassin's Creed, we've been given a new look at Assassin's Creed Unity, due out in just over a month. This cinematic is lifted directly from the game, and while we're not sure just why Arno is in prison, we're guessing he won't be staying there very long.
Where'd you come by this, piss pot?
I'm in no mood for this. Give it back!
Take it back. If you think you can.
It's been a while since we've heard anything from the Fear franchise, but developer Area Games is getting ready to launch a brand new take on the story. Fear Online is a free-to-play multiplayer shooter adaptation of Warner Bros. Fright Fest, and it's headed to PC later this month. The storyline fits in alongside Fear 2 Project Origin, and the team has worked hard to maintain the scares of the single-player original while transforming it into a 4-person co-op experience. Something else terrifying is the newest DLC pack for Payday 2, which introduces new materials, melee weapons, submachine guns, and masks, all inspired by Hotline Miami. The teams at Dennerton Games and Overkill have worked together on this one, so if you're a fan of heists, this one should be a treat. To pick it up, you will of course need a copy of Payday 2, and you can grab the DLC via Steam. Minecraft continues its slow, inevitable invasion of every single platform known to man, with Microsoft announcing the Xbox One version of the world builder is headed to retail stores from November 18. The game is available right now for download, but if you would prefer a copy you can hold in your hands, you've still got a little while longer to wait. And finally this week, not one, but 3 stories from the film world. Zombie smasher Dead Rising is currently being transformed into a feature-length presentation for Sony's online entertainment network Crackle, eyeing off a video-on-demand DVD and TV release sometime later. We've known for a while that Zach Lipovsky is directing, following on from working on Leprechaun Origin, but this week we learnt a few more of the headline cast, including Jesse Metcalfe from John Tucker Must Die, Megan Ori from Once Upon a Time, and Virginia Madsen from Sideways. Filming has officially started, and while we're not quite sure what to expect from Dead Rising Watchtower, given the serious, no-nonsense approach of the video games, we're hoping for more of the same. Some more video news, as we have been given the cast list for the upcoming Angry Birds adaptation, one of the few video game movie tie-ins that could actually work spectacularly well when it hits cinemas in 2016. News from Rovio has some impressive names voicing our frustrated feathery friends, including Jason Sudeikis, Danny McBride, Bill Hader, Maya Rudolph, and Josh Gad from Frozen. Peter Dinklage is also playing a role. He is the new voice of the legendary Mighty Eagle, so we're all hoping he does a better job than he did in Destiny. And you would be forgiven for thinking this last one is a joke. Tetris is the last video game to make the jump to the big screen, as it's been picked up by the studio that brought us the Mortal Kombat movies back in the 90s. Tetris is still a long way off, but we're already promised that this one will not be a movie with a bunch of lines running all over the page. Instead, there will not be any geometric shapes with feet, with Larry Kasanoff explaining the studio is working on a very big, epic sci-fi movie. Of course they are. For more information on any of these stories, or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come.
Me with that.
I have a confession to make. I've never actually played either Borderlands game. They look like a lot of fun, but really, I just don't play well with others, and the idea of having to find 3 other people to explore Pandora, it simply didn't appeal to me. So I left the bazillion guns and the dubstep and the claptrap to everybody else, and I went on my merry way. Then, 2K Australia invited me to check out Borderlands the pre-sequel, and I found myself stuck in front of a PC with not much of an idea about what I was doing. I had a great time.
When you play Borderlands 2, the moon's all cracked and covered in lava. There's a space station up there. Hyperion is completely taken over, and Handsome Jack, this guy who you hadn't heard of before, has risen to power and taken over. He has a personal grudge against Claptrap, a little stupid steward robot on the planet who has a personal grudge against Handsome Jack, which is a really strange relationship quirk. And we have his lieutenants. He's got his girlfriend is like the sheriff of Lynchwood now. She's taken over a town. His main lieutenant is Wilhelm, who's this super powerful robot guy. There's robots that are like militarized loader bots, which is kind of strange. There's all these things that have happened in the universe at that point. And we started talking to the guys in Australia about what they wanted to do. They really wanted to explore the rise of Handsome Jack, how this guy turned into someone so evil. But they also wanted to explore that bit of history. What happened on the moon? Why is the space station there? How did he come to power? How did all these different things come? How did he get this grudge with Claptrap? Where did Nish and Wilhelm come from? So we thought, yeah, there's that game that never existed and no one ever played it. We could make that. That'd be fun.
I'm programmed to be foolishly optimistic in situations such as these.
Why am I not surprised?
Part of the reason why the Borderlands series has been so ridiculously successful is that it's also ridiculously fun. It's shameless in what it sets out to do, and by this stage it's almost a parody of itself. Borderlands, the pre-sequel, fits in between Borderlands and Borderlands 2 in the 5-year gap created by the two games. Instead of being set on Pandora, this one's set on the moon, and instead of being developed in-house at Texas-based studio Gearbox Software, this one is developed by Canberra-based studio 2K Australia. The result? A game that feels undeniably Borderlands, but that sounds very, very different.
I think this game would have been very different without 2K Australia taking part in the collaboration. There'd be a lot of things that we wouldn't have seen. I guess one of the key things, and the things that's probably most obvious, is Elpis wouldn't have had an Australian cultural flavour to it. There wouldn't have been an Australian accent on the moon.
Like the fun kind of talk, or the dull kind?
This is so friggin' hot.
A lot of Australians are saying, what's with this ridiculous over-the-top accent? No, they're actual Australian actors speaking with Australian accents. You're just so used to hearing Americans in your culture in all the movies and shows and things that it's jarring, apparently, for people to hear, an accent that's familiar. Borderlands is a game that makes fun of itself. We make fun of ourselves all the time. We have Face McShooty. We have all kinds of ridiculous things. We're constantly making fun of ourselves. We're making fun of who we are and where we're from, and we make fun of gun culture and American gun culture. Torg is just American 80s action movies all over the place. So, but one of the great things about making fun of yourself is you're allowed to do that, and everyone can laugh at it. So when Australia makes fun of Australia, well, they have no one to blame but themselves.
Another major difference beyond the accents is the location. Pandora's moon, Elpis, is just like our moon in that it's got much less gravity. This means that the already somewhat floaty Borderlands action is now even more. This all comes at a cost though. Jumping and butt slamming back down again uses precious oxygen, and you've only got a certain amount. Replenishing your supply is as simple as wandering into an oxygen-rich environment, and there are plenty of these dotted around the maps. In my experience, I generally had enough, but there were a few moments where my random wanderings turned into slightly less random, oh, I should probably go and find some more of that.
Borderlands has been a huge change for us. We've been working on some games which some would consider we have some pretty serious storylines, pretty serious subject matter. I guess working with Borderlands, we basically were allowed to have fun and do the things we really love doing in developing games. So I guess over the last year and a bit, we've had a lot of fun making Borderlands. The collaboration with Gearbox has been excellent. I think we found a bit of a kindred spirit in another studio on another side of the world, and found a few things about our studio ourselves in that we love to have fun and we love to make this game, and fun and games should be the way you make games completely.
After I'd played around with Borderlands the pre-sequel for a while, checking out the new characters, that is Athena the Gladiator, Nisha the Lawbringer, Wilhelm the Enforcer, and the slightly berserk Claptrap, and jumping all over the moon, I chatted to some of the developers about why I had never actually dabbled with the franchise before. To my surprise, it turns out that a number of the team who works on the game and loudly sings the praises of the co-op element actually play solo, given the chance. One of them explained that sometimes it's just too difficult to find partners, but the others admitted that they prefer to spend their time on Pandora, and now Elpis, by themselves. Looks like I might have to give Borderlands a proper go after all.
You coming?
So Hatsune Miku, she is essentially a virtual idol. She got her start as a voice synthesization program that you can buy. She's owned by Krypton Future Media. Basically what happened is you can buy this software. If you don't have access to like a famous pop star or a really great vocalist, you can take this software and basically use it to write a vocal track over your song as a songwriter. And she just had a lot of traction in Japan. Her voice is really cute, and it just, people really kind of took to her on the internet, and before you knew it, tons of amateur artists were using her to create really original music, especially in the Japanese sort of space where J-pop has sort of a set style, and this allowed people to kind of break outside that mold and get famous doing things on the internet. So that was her start, and here we are in 2014 where she's kind of taken on a life of her own. And immediately, the internet started kind of taking it over, and it kind of started breathing life into her character. And Sega saw there was a potential to kind of craft a new rhythm game experience around this, around this sort of amateur grassroots movement behind the music. And so 2 years later, in 2009, we released the very first Project Diva game for PlayStation Portal, PSP. And since then, there's been 5 game releases in Japan. And the fourth in this series, Project Diva F, made its first appearance overseas last August with the PlayStation 3 release. And we're happy to announce that we're following up with this sequel, which will be coming out the fall of 2014. Last time, we were really focused mainly on the digital products, but in North America we did see a package release for the PS3 version specifically, but this time we're really happy to announce that everyone's getting package versions. North America, Europe, Australia included, in both PlayStation 3 and Vita.
It's so exciting. For people who haven't played a Miku game, you say it's a rhythm game, but it's not. When people think Japanese rhythm game, they sort of think Dance Dance Revolution, and there's lots of moving around and physical activity. Miku's not like that.
No, it's not like that at all. It's much more focused on. It's sort of similar to DDR, but I mean, it's really focused on your fingers, so you don't have to break a sweat. You kind of have to break a mental sweat sometimes, but it's mainly focused on your thumb.
And so that is exactly why it's coming out on Vita, so you can play it on the bus.
Exactly. And also, one of the great features of F2 is the fact that it supports cross-save. So if you do go out and buy, if you're a super fan and you buy both the PS3 version and the Vita version, it will sync your save data, so you can play it at home on your PS3, and when you're ready to go, you just grab your Vita, walk out the door, and you've already got the save data right there.
Because it is the sort of game that once you start playing, you do just want to keep playing because the songs are amazing. And also, getting back to what we were talking about before, you're saying how some of the more indie musicians have picked her up and run with the character and made their own songs. These aren't only, original Sega or Krypton music that's included in Diva F second, are they?
No. Most of the music in this is actually stuff that was created by the crowd, and it's just stuff that's gotten popular, sort of through social network sites and whatnot. Sites like Nico Nico Doga, which is, for people who don't know, is sort of like the YouTube of Japan. And a lot of that's being driven. A lot of it's being driven by that popularity. There are some songs that Sega actually reaches out and contracts for. One of the songs we have here, "Decorator," which is done by KZ Livetune. That was something that we actually reached out to KZ and had him create for us for promotional purposes in this game. But most of the music, is definitely stuff that's just that people did on their own.
And when you talk about it being a localized version, you don't mean that anyone's gone through and translated all the songs. All the songs are still in Japanese.
Correct. Right now, just like the last version, we currently have all the songs using Romaji. So if you want to learn how to sing the songs in Japanese, you can do that. We also do know that people have been asking for lyrics. No announcement on English lyrics right now, but we are hearing that, and so we appreciate that feedback.
Do you think there's ever any possibility that we might get a fully westernized Miku that sings in English?
Sings in English, that'd actually be pretty challenging. That we'd actually have to go back to each artist and have them. We'd have to translitericize all the lyrics so they can actually be sung. That would be a very, very huge undertaking.
What about making up their own songs in English?
Right, so last August, actually, Miku got her first English release. So the Vocaloid software, after being upgraded to version 3, she can actually sing in English right now. And if you've been following the news, she opened in North America for Lady Gaga. She's starting to kind of get her feet wet. Artists as well are becoming more and more familiar with the Vocaloid software, and I'm really excited and hoping to see some more compelling content coming out in English in the near future.
It would be great if every idea made it from mind to medium. Unfortunately, the real world often interferes. Countless books, films, and video games have run afoul of the spectres of time and resources. Games themselves are an expensive process. It takes a lot of time and money to bring an electronic vision to life. Not every adventure makes it from point A to point B. Some simply fade away. These are the top 5 games that never were. Number 5. It used to be when you were out of ideas of what to do with a character, you'd send them into space. These days, now that space opera has been played out, it's much more common to send them into the past. Or rather, an alternative past, where gas reigns supreme. So, Gotham by Gaslight. Based on the one-shot comic, the game would have put Batman against Jack the Ripper. The game itself looked really interesting. It would have provided an unfamiliar setting for a very familiar character, thus creating an interesting challenge for the players. However, due to licensing hiccups, THQ were not able to make this happen. Only a few concept art shots ever made it out. Number 4. Tim Schafer is one of the great minds in gaming, having given us extraordinary worlds through Grim Fandango, Psychonauts, and Brutal Legend. However, Before all that, he gave us the biker-bashing mystery starring Ben and the Polecats in Full Throttle, one of the most refined Scum games from LucasArts. Originally published in 1995, it wasn't until 2002 we heard some peeps of something new from the franchise. Hell on Wheels was supposed to be an adventure set in El Nada, Ben's old stomping ground, featuring bigger parts by colourful antagonists the Cavefish, and two new gangs, the Wraith and the Hound Dogs. It made it as far as a pretty decent gameplay trailer, before being unceremoniously scrapped in 2003. Number 3. The Old World series is an easy one to get lost in. From Abe's Odyssey onwards, it charmed us with goofy characters and hard-hitting environmental themes, all leading towards a real-time strategy game called The Hand of Odd. Originally cancelled in 1999, the game would put you in control of one of two opposing teams, the industrial landmuggers and the nature-loving treehuggers, who were fighting for control over Oddworld. Each unit had different attributes to help on the battlefield, making character selection a really important part of the game's overall strategy. Unlike a lot of other games on this list, we can still hold out hope for this one. Just Add Water, the company behind the HD re-releases and remakes of the old Old World games, have said that they are intending to release the game nearly 15 years later, possibly as a free-to-play game for the tablets. Number 2. It's hard to explain exactly how large of an impact 1993's Star Fox had on gaming. Sure, these mere hundreds of polygons pushed out by the now prehistoric Super FX chip may look quaint compared to the PlayStation 4, but back in the day, this was mind-blowing. We wanted more, and a sequel was inevitable. Star Fox 2 promised new characters, vastly different gameplay, and an improvement on even these stunning visuals. It seemed almost unbelievable. Free roam flying and even a basic multiplayer mode were among the improvements. The game itself had shifted into more of a strategy as opposed to a rail shooter like its predecessor. Though the game was finished and ready to ship in Japan, it was cancelled to focus more on the Nintendo 64, which was released in 1996. Many of the features designed for Star Fox 2 made it into other Star Fox games down the line, but if you're curious, a fully functioning ROM of the unreleased sequel has been seen on some of the internet's less refutable areas. Number 1. This one was a shock to discover. It's proof that the games industry, particularly with licensed characters, is a harsh one indeed. It's proof that great things can come out of failure, and proof that sometimes things just don't go your way. In 2000, a game was scheduled to come out, starring the DC Animated Universe version of Superman. In this game, Superman would freeze things with his super breath, have bullets bounce off his chest, and even fly. This was, according to leaked footage, an accurate and fun game starring the, for some reason, incredibly difficult character. Unfortunately, Titus, the holder to the license, let it expire before the game was released. And I would be remiss not to mention the other factor that contributed to the failure of this game. There was another Superman game that came out a year earlier, and it was derided by critics and gamers alike. And we shall never speak of Superman 64 again.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, we jump into two very different spaces. Ubisoft takes us to the heights of Nepal as we look at Far Cry 4, while Disney and Harmonix explore the world of our imaginations with Fantasia Music Evolved. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.